So tell me, John.
Take a look. Here's the photo of a company that produces fresh mango in Mali. And this is a picture of Marlene.
Hello, my name is Marlene Amegampwe and I'm the General Manager of SCS International.
How interesting.
Marlene is 27 years old and originally from Benin. The company that she runs has seen incredible growth. In 2007, SCS had a turnover of €30,000. In 2014, it was €1.5 million.
What happened? Has Marlene found oil in her fields?
No. Amongst other things, the company benefited from EU assistance.
What? The European Union invests in African companies?
No, not directly. SCS is supported by COLEACP.
What?
COLEACP, the Europe, Africa, Caribbean, Pacific Liaison Committee. We're an interprofessional organisation from the private sector. We represent producers and exporters of fruit and vegetables in the south and European importers in the north.
And what do you do?
Together, we account for more than 85% of the flow of fruit and vegetables from ACP countries to Europe. For 40 years now, our entrepreneurs have been aware of the importance of their role in the development of their region.
But where on earth do you come from?
At the end of the 90s, regulations on food products became more stringent in the EU. There was a risk of losing an important market for exporters in the south, which would have had a catastrophic socio-economic impact for small producers. We alerted the European Commission, which worked with the ACP group of states to design and finance a technical assistance program. This program was entrusted to COLEACP. It's called the PIP.
Strange name?
PIP is well known in ACP countries. Millions of small producers have benefited from it and have been able to meet this challenge. Let me illustrate what I mean. Imagine the regulations as a train that's constantly moving forward and doesn't stop. The ACP producers are afraid they'll miss the train.
And?
Well, COLEACP gave them the means to catch the train and climb aboard. And it doesn't stop there. COLEACP is now ahead of the train. We anticipate evolutions in the market. We pay close attention to railway points.
Railway points?
Well, for instance, without knowing it, we anticipated the principles of social responsibility. Along with the European Commission, we also pioneered public-private partnerships for development.
In practice, what do you do exactly?
Well, let's go back to Marlene. She wanted to meet her customers' requirements for organic produce and implement an ethical approach.
Oh, very trendy.
Her company started by sending a request for support to COLEACP. Well, we started by building an action plan with her with a dedicated budget.
What do you mean by action plan?
You need to understand that COLEACP support is centered on technical assistance and capacity building, and it is always based on cost-sharing principles between the beneficiary and COLEACP. So we identify and define everyone's responsibilities.
Practically?
Marlene focuses on infrastructural improvements, while we take charge of the capacity building of her staff. Every single support activity in the action plan is conditioned by the completion of the company's counterpart.
And does it really work?
It always works with motivated companies. When Marlene took on an ethical approach, we advised her, but she had the potential.
You are a kind of coach?
Exactly. The support provided by the European Development Fund has a leverage effect. As soon as customers are confident in a company's performances, it gains the trust of financial backers too.
Any figures?
SCS now exports 1,500 tons of fresh mangoes to Europe, and Marlene is in a much better position to access various funding sources for her investment projects.
Is that a lot? 1,500 tons of mangoes.
SCS is still an SME, but its growth is impressive. It's gone from exporting 2 containers in 2007 to 60 in 2014. At the start, Marlene worked with 40 small producers, all certified. And today she works with 5 times that number.
For the capacity building, as you call it, do you send the European experts in the field? That must cost an arm and a leg.
No, we work with local resources. Now look, this young woman is called Niama. She goes to villages and trains growers who produce fruit for SCS. COLEACP designed the educational materials.
But this Niama, then is she paid by COLEACP?
No, she is employed by SCS. Marlene hired her. But Niama was trained by a local consultant, who in turn had been trained by COLEACP. In fact, we train trainers. We put together both technical and pedagogical training. We have developed tools and a methodology that works really well in the field. And we've also set up an e-learning platform.
How many people out there are like Niama?
There are tens of thousands in companies trained by our network of around 1,000 consultants. We have in fact created self-sustaining support mechanisms.
You seem quite proud.
Yes, we're happy to see the experts that we've trained offering their services in other ACP countries, a South-South cooperation. And I'd go even further. These local consultants now contribute to the design of our future interventions. They add their input to our methodology and to our tools. You could almost call it a South-North cooperation.
So actually, you're a training body.
We train, but that is only part of what we do. We defend the interests of our beneficiaries at an institutional level. We keep them informed. We also have a research and development department.
What do you develop? New varieties of fruit?
No, we produce, for instance, very detailed technical manuals. They're really Bibles. Local agronomists use them in the field to improve, for instance, food safety for fruit and vegetables. We also provide support to put in place quality management systems so that companies can ultimately obtain certification.
Organic? Ethical? That kind of thing?
Yes, and plenty more besides. To date, COLEACP has published more than 500 references, which we freely shared with partners such as the FAO and the ITC, and national bilateral cooperation agencies such as the AFD, the GIZ, SNV.
But do you only work with the private sector?
No. One of the programme's key success factors has been its holistic approach, considering the business environment as a whole. We build the capacity of laboratories, universities, professional associations, but also of the relevant competent authorities. Our EDES programme is aimed at the public sector. We adopt an integrated approach to have an impact on the entire value chain.
What's your formula?
Think globally, act locally. We start by defining priorities through listening to what is needed. Then we pool resources for greater efficiency. That's our global approach. But when it comes to acting locally, we follow some principles. 1. Never substitute local players. 2. Always evaluate the positive effects of an action for an individual beneficiary in order to then make it available to others. 3. Companies that we support must commit to making their activities sustainable on all fronts: economic, social and environmental. This is the essence of the Sustainability and Competitiveness Programme, which we have launched. Sustainability for companies means improving their competitiveness.
Competitiveness? That's not a word you use when talking about cooperation.
We're an organisation of entrepreneurs, not daydreamers. Our board of directors is made up of businessmen. They embrace sustainability as long as it's connected to a certain degree of profitability.
OK, that's enough waffling. I want figures.
In 12 years, thanks to the European Development Fund, COLEACP has been able to support 1,600 projects, like Marlene's, in 50 countries. Our results have had an impact on the whole horticultural sector.
According to whom?
Our activities have undergone an external evaluation appointed by the European Commission. The conclusions drawn by the report were very positive.
Do I just have to take your word for it?
Nope, here's the file. These last 5 years, the companies that we have supported have increased their revenues and created employment. Women account for more than 50% of the workforce in the horticultural sector, and an ever-growing number of small producers are joining local, regional and international supply chains.
And in simple terms, please?
Well, let's go back to Marlene. Last year, her company distributed 300,000 euros to its small producers and harvesters. That provided an income to more than 1,000 people living in rural areas.
But by maintaining small producers in the value chain at all costs, aren't you going to end up promoting poverty?
It's precisely to avoid that we advocate for rapid economic improvement, which enables small producers to move from the informal to formal sector. Their children need to be given the incentive to develop the family business sustainably. It is fundamental that young farmers have the possibility to hope for a better life.
Yes, but young people often prefer cities to the countryside.
Unless jobs are created in rural areas that allow these young people to move with the times and to have more prospects. You know, African rural areas are already connected. Producers, for instance, use apps especially designed for their activities.
Small Farmer 3.0.
That's one way to put it.
You talk about sustainability, but isn't it still a paradox to export fruit and vegetables from countries that have so much trouble feeding their own populations?
The paradox is that exporting is beneficial for local production. Exporting is a factor of modernization, greater food safety, better yields, quality produce on local markets, all of which improves subsistence agriculture and contributes thereby to ensuring food security and reducing poverty for populations. It's a virtuous circle.
But there must be some downsides to it. For example, making all those people dependent on a few companies without any transmission of skills or technology, and also without there being any real positive impact on local populations.
The danger exists. There might be a temptation in some cases for agri-food leaders to simplify schemes by shortening supply chains through vertical integration. But COLEACP firmly believes in a complete, varied and inclusive economic fabric, where each player in the value chain has a role to play, a value added, from small producers to local SMEs, and all the way up to the multinationals.
Picking mangoes and exporting them, that's not really creating added value, is it?
Well, as to that, ACP companies have fully understood that they can directly take part in processing some of their products. Juice, dried fruit, jam. Many of these businesses have already been supported through this process by COLEACP.
You've got an answer for everything. That's really annoying.
We're modestly trying to meet the demand. We're being called upon to operate in new countries in Africa, the Caribbean and the Pacific. We're also extending our field of intervention.
Now, what does that mean?
Well, we're adapting our methods to new sectors, such as coffee and cocoa. We want to make the most out of our tools and our network of consultants that have been proven to perform efficiently.
You could say that your actions are starting to bear fruit?
We have a vision, one of a world in which the rural populations in ACP countries have access to decent jobs. I'm talking about millions of men and women. One day it's small producers like those working with Marlene who will be feeding the planet.
Another cup of coffee?
I would love one.